Grab your light. This is Stop the Wikipedia when you're high.
Stop the Wikipedia when you're high.
Today's Stuff to Wikipedia When You're High is Yoshie Shiratori. Yoshie Shiratori was a Japanese national famous for having escaped from prison 4 different times, making him an anti-hero in Japanese culture. There is a memorial to Shiratori at the Abashiri Prison Museum. You gotta be a bad motherfucker for a prison you escaped from to house a memorial in your honor. So let's get into his escapes. Again, there are 4 of them. First, he was falsely accused of robbery and murder, so Shiratori was imprisoned at Aomori Prison in 1936. However, after studying the guards' routine for months, he escaped by picking his cell lock with the metal wire that was wrapped around the bucket provided for bathing, and he escaped through a cracked skylight. Before escaping, he placed floorboards onto his futon to fool the passing guards into thinking he was still in there asleep. Classic Ferris Bueller move. Who among us hasn't piled pillows into our bed to convince our parents we were in there asleep while we were out smoking weed out of a Coke can behind the garage, right?
Did you go all out with it though? Like, you know, get the trophy and like the rope tied to it, so when they opened the door,
You could sit it up?
yeah, and like didn't have like the speaker playing snoring sounds or anything like that.
No, nobody can pull off the full Ferris.
Yeah, no, that's pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, he was really, really good. The best of all time. The GOAT, really, of fake sleeping in his bed and skipping school. It says, after his escape, police recaptured Shiratori 3 days later when he was stealing supplies from a hospital. He was sentenced to life in prison for escaping and theft, and he was transferred to Akita Prison in 1942. At Akita Prison, Shiratori was placed in a cell specifically designed for escape artists, featuring high ceilings, one small skylight, and smooth copper walls. They stuck dude in the Houdini cell. Nevertheless, Shiratori was able to scale the walls and noticed that the wood holding the window bars was beginning to rot. What is he, Spider-Man? How the fuck do you scale smooth copper walls? I guess Shiratori was just built different. It says every night he would climb up to loosen the vent until he finally managed to pry away the wood and open the skylight. Knowing prison staff would be able to hear his footsteps on the roof, Shiratori waited until a stormy night to climb the walls and escape. Pull the old Shawshank Redemption move, the thunderstorm cover. You seen Shawshank Redemption?
I've seen it.
Okay, good for
Doesn't
you.
he like use a spoon to like carve out like the wall or whatever?
But at the end he waits, like when he's almost done, he waits for, he gets through the wall, and then there's like something else he has to bust through, so he waits with a hammer, and he like strikes it every time that there's a thunder strike so that they can't hear it. But he also crawls through a river of shit 2 miles long. That's not what Shiratori had to do. He just used the thunderstorm. Anyway, 3 months later, he shows up. This is his second escape, remember? And they used a special cell for him. He gets out anyway, and 3 months later, he shows up at guard Kobayashi's house to ask for help in a case against injustice in the Japanese prison system, as he was one of the only people who had shown kindness and respect to Shiratori during his stay at the Akita prison. He showed up to one of the prison guards' houses. This dude was reckless. It says, however, while Shiratori was in the bathroom, the guard called the police because, and Shiratori was arrested yet again and sent back to prison. This dude wanted to go back. Like, that is the only explanation.
He wanted to see if he could do it again.
I think he was just testing himself repeatedly. He was like, I've done it twice. Fuck it, one more. I'm going to go over to that guard's house, the nice guard, and let him call the cops on me. Throw him a bone. So, during the winter of 1943, Shiratori was transferred to Abashiri Prison in northern Hokkaido, the country's northernmost prison. So it's the furthest north. And he was still wearing summer prison garments because I guess he just didn't keep up with the prison styles, right? And he was thrown into an open cell exposed to the extreme cold, which sounds like a human rights violation. But it says it was allowing the guards to beat him whenever he stood up. So they really weren't trying to let this guy get out this time. Angrily, Shiratori vowed to escape, and to the guards' amazement, broke his handcuffs in front of them. This guy sounds like a fucking superhero. Seriously, like he's like the Hulk combined with Spider-Man now. Later, he was placed in a specially made set of handcuffs, taking nearly 2 hours to unlock by a specialist who came once per week so that he could bathe. So they got him in handcuffs that took almost 2 hours to take off, that had to be done by a specialist who was coming in once a week so guy could bathe, which frankly, once a week for a bath seems like it's probably a little bit too often. It says when the guards delivered meals, however, he would always drip miso soup on the handcuffs and food slot, both of which eventually became corroded, allowing Shiratori to break them. All right, so this is 1943 he gets there, right? On August 26, 1944, he dislocates both of his shoulders and fits out the narrow food slot in his cell door and escapes the prison using a wartime blackout as cover.
What's a wartime blackout?
They lost power due to like bombing or something, and he's been dripping miso soup on the fucking food slot for a year, so it's corroded enough for him to bust out of after he dislocates both of his shoulders. What a psychopath. After living in an abandoned mine deep in the mountains for 2 years, he descended to a nearby village and learned of the surrender of Japan. However, he was captured yet again after fatally stabbing a farmer who attacked him after he was caught stealing a tomato from his farm. Shiratori said it was an act of self-defense. For his previous escapes and the farmer's murder, Shiratori was sentenced to death by the Sapporo District Court. At Sapporo Prison, he was placed in a specially designed cell with high ceilings and windows smaller than his head. Maybe at this point, consider getting him a cell with just no windows? Why would you risk it? Anyway, it says, however, the prison guards at Sapporo had so much faith in this cell that they no longer bothered to handcuff Shiratori. Stupid. And because they paid so much attention to his ceiling escapes, they neglected the floors. So in 1947, he dug his way out by making a tunnel with miso soup bowls. Why were they still serving him miso soup?
You would think they would have learned from the last time.
I mean, come on. He was placing the dirt in a small pocket underneath the floorboards. After a year of freedom, it is said that Shiratori was offered a cigarette by a police officer in a park. In 1948, cigarettes were luxury items in Japan, and he was so moved by the kindness that Shiratori admitted he was an escaped convict and offered to be turned in. He's going back again. What the fuck? So he's arrested again, he's tried again, but the High Court of Sapporo, having reviewed his case, decided that the farmer's death was indeed a result of an act of self-defense, and that during his escapes, he had not once injured or killed a single guard. As a result, the court revoked his death sentence, instead sentencing him to 20 years for his escapes. Shiratori's request to be imprisoned in Tokyo was also granted, and he spent 14 years in Fuchu prison until 1961 when he was released for good behavior. Later, he returned to Aomori to reunite with his daughter, and his wife had died while he was in prison. So Shiratori lived for another decade working odd jobs to survive and eventually succumbed to a heart attack in 1979 at the age of 71. See? 71. I could be halfway home. Midlife crisis. It sounds to me, though, like maybe this guy just hated his wife and he wanted to be incarcerated until she died.
Yeah, he was going through his own midlife crisis. Like, I gotta, let me just see if I can escape some prisons. He's giving Michael Scofield a run for his money there.
Oh, yeah.
All the prison breaks.
Oh, yeah. This guy was the GOAT. Seriously, it does sound like on some level he may have inspired Shawshank Redemption. Like, they used multiple things from this dude's real-life escapes for that movie, which I believe was made in, like, the 70s? I'm going to look it up. Shawshank Redemption. 1994. I was only 20 years off.
Close, yeah.
Close, but no cigar. Anyway, crazy stuff. And that's today's Stuff to Wikipedia When You're High. Yoshie Shiratori.